Whether we burn 500 million, 5 billion, or 50 billion a year, I don't care. Sam Altman said this at an address to Stanford University last year in reference to the cost to build AGI, or Artificial General Intelligence. In case you haven't heard, AGI means, it's actually pretty hard to pin down exactly what it means, how we'll know when we've achieved it, and what exactly it'll do for us, or to us. To date, there's 14 different definitions for AGI, and its equally nebulously defined cousin, ASI, Artificial Superintelligence, is just Super AGI, whatever that means. But we're spending a ton of money to figure it out. That confusion is exactly why this matters and why we need a clear map, not more panic. Today, we're going to look at a surprising source for a model to navigate this. So once again, this is Justin Benfit reminding you to go lean into the nuance. Let's go. The most common definitions for these lofty goals generally include something along the lines of AI being smarter than the smartest human in any knowledge domain. The theory here is that when there are AIs with this level of intelligence, they'll quickly figure out how to solve all of the world's problems and thrust humanity into an unprecedented utopia where humans won't have to work and will effectively become a bunch of house cats for these new superior forms of intelligence, which is great if you like cats or you would like to become one. There are others who make the argument that because AGI would be so much smarter than all of us, we'd effectively be in the dark on its priorities and largely powerless to mold it to care about us, which could cause problems. A recent book with a particularly flowery title was written by longtime AI researchers Eliezer Yudkowsky and Nate Soares, and is called If Anyone Builds It, We All Die. Now, I've listened to several interviews with these two, and how they've gotten from we won't be able to control AI's preferences to we're all gonna die is a bit of a stretch, but they aren't alone in their fears. Geoffrey Hinton, who's known as the godfather of AI, and many other credible voices aren't much more optimistic in their predictions. Regardless, as the opening quote made very clear, Sam Altman doesn't care. This year alone, his company, OpenAI, has made over $800 billion in deals with different countries in pursuit of AGI. $800 billion. On a future bet that's so unclear, it currently has 14 different working definitions. And despite having massive user adoption with over 800 million users of ChatGPT, OpenAI still lost $11.5 billion last quarter alone and is literally depending on AGI to figure out how to make the company profitable. And if this AGI craze turns out to be a bubble, then the US stock market, which is currently being propped up by these AI hopes, is going to be in a world of hurt. The stakes literally couldn't be higher. Looking at this future, I can't help but think of the quote by the 19th century philosopher Nietzsche. Quote, "Whoever battles monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster himself. And when you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." There's never been a time in history when this quote fit a situation better than it does now, in my opinion. Especially because almost every person on Earth has, or soon will have, a personal window into the abyss. And I'm not just referring to AGI or even just regular old AI. We're living in a perfect storm of global political uncertainty and conflict. The economies of the world are collectively struggling, and all of this we have constantly streaming into our brains through our phones or computers. The abyss is literally looking back at us 6 to 10 hours a day. Any ideas we want to expose ourselves to are literally a few taps away. And if we're not careful, we can allow ourselves to be swept up in ideas that can cause deep depression, apathy, or worse. And look, we know the negative effects of social media pretty well by now, but we're just about to hit the supercharged second act of the internet. Goodness sake, this intro is depressing. Okay, so you get the picture. What are we gonna do about it? To find that answer, it'll be helpful to understand this Nietzschean concept of the abyss. Tonight, I was reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone with my son, and the giant named Hagrid at one point, when asked about why there was something called a Ministry of Magic, which is like the magic government, says, "Why blimey, Harry, everyone would be wanting magic solutions to their problems. We're best left alone." And I read this and I was very taken with the fact that we're now experiencing what it's like to almost wave a magic wand and have some of the things that we never really liked doing in the first place begin to just be resolved for us from now on. But as soon as I Googled the quote, I immediately found myself immersed in a Reddit thread that was just full of the most interesting critiques of that seemingly innocuous sentence. And honestly, these comments had the effect that most Reddit threads have on me, which is to remind me that I'm not quite edgy enough to be on Reddit. And I happen to like the original quote because it's a good metaphor for the reality that we're moving into. This is, I believe, part of the abyss that Nietzsche was warning us about. Convenience. But Nietzsche, for all of his seemingly depressing logic, was actually an optimist, and he spoke at great length about something called the Übermensch, or Superman. This is in stark contrast to what he called the last man, who holds convenience, comfort, and safety sacred above all else. The Superman was someone who went through 3 stages of transformation to become effectively enlightened, having fought the monsters and come out on the other side still swinging. The 3 phases were Phase 1, the camel, Phase 2, the lion, and Phase 3, the baby. And what I find very interesting is that these stages are actually a really helpful model for knowing what to do no matter what situation you're facing. First phase, the camel. This phase is marked by the ability to endure the load. The camel represents someone who does what they should and tries to follow norms. This to me is the bulk of the United States after 9/11. There was no TikTok. We got into the global war on terror. It lasted 20 years. So let's put that period from 2001 to 2021, ending with the botched evacuation of the US out of Afghanistan. Then COVID hit, and we entered a new era. Nietzsche called this phase the lion, in which you should is replaced by I will, especially true in the West because we're so individualistic. The advent and proliferation of the internet changed the dissemination and sharing of information more dramatically than at any time since the printing press. And like with the printing press, which inspired men like Martin Luther to publicly question previously held norms, the spread of information from the internet bred Facebooks, TikToks, YouTubes, and Twitters, which ironically are full of people who question the actions of powerful institutions such as big tech. And we're smack dab in the middle of that one. But I think I see signs of phase 3, which is where I see AI as an electric variable that'll make the outcome really difficult to predict. One thing that's increasingly likely is that AI becomes more capable with time. If AI has sufficient context about a problem, it's actually becoming really good at solving it. So it's not impossible to imagine that with enough time, AI models can get so good at pre-supplying themselves with all of the needed context for any problem that even if we don't get to this Terminator level AGI, AI could still theoretically not need us in the loop anymore. And that feels like the abyss that Nietzsche spoke of in the quote above. We'll be back to the episode in a second, but first, I need to shamelessly plug the AI tool that I built that helped me make this very episode. If you make YouTube videos or long-form posts like blog articles and you want AI to speed up the work without stealing your voice, try Deepleaf. It keeps your whole project in one notebook so insights and sources never get lost. It's tuned for research so outputs aren't hollow or hallucinated, and it polishes drafts so you finish faster while staying unmistakably you. Start your 7-day free trial now and don't act like you're not impressed. And as a thank you for supporting this channel, enter Justin20 in the promo code section on sign up and you'll get 20% off your first 3 months. Thanks, and now back to the episode. The thing about that quote that just sticks with me and feels eerily relevant to AI is that when Nietzsche talks about gazing into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into the viewer. The use of the word gaze just makes my skin crawl a little bit because this is literally what big tech has been doing for over a decade now with all of their data capturing. And now it's even more extreme because whereas, for example, in my field of data science, when people speak about earlier forms of AI, such as machine learning, they talk about training models to recognize patterns in the data. But increasingly, when describing the learning process of cutting-edge AI, such as new large language models, which is what ChatGPT is built on, the term I hear is growing, as in growing a living organism. That causes the word gaze to take on just a little creepier meaning, doesn't it? But is that all just AI hype? After all, bad news sells. So where does that leave us? Well, I think back to Harry Potter, or more specifically, Hagrid's quote from earlier about how people would just beg witches and wizards for magic solutions if they knew about them. Well, here we are. AI magic is sweeping in to increase the convenience and danger in our world with greater and greater speed and less effort. Is this going to lead to our doom? Or is it maybe just a catalyst for us as society to enter the third phase of Nietzsche's metamorphosis, the baby? Before we go there, I just feel it's really important that we clarify some things about Nietzsche's often misrepresented ideas because it'll help us understand the final point. Nietzsche deeply understood human nature and our need for meaning, and he recognized that as traditional structures, which placed the church at the center of state power, eroded as a result of the Enlightenment, the society would need to find new values to use as foundations. He saw himself as a forerunner whose purpose was to convince people that a new value system was needed and to set up a framework for them to come to new definitions for themselves. The three phases of the camel, the lion, and the baby form that prescribed process by which he saw this new evolution of values sprouting. His ideas have been an inspiration to many different groups, from religious theologians to atheists. And it's also worth noting that when you research Nietzsche, you'll see that he was a huge influence on Hitler and the Nazis. This is actually due to his evil Nazi-loving sister who rewrote his ideas into pro-Nazi propaganda and slapped his name on it after he went insane later in life. This has caused many misunderstandings about what he stood for, and he most definitely would have been horrified to know that his work was being used toward that end. But I digress. What exactly is helpful about thinking about becoming like a baby? What's interesting is that this type of baby is not unlike a real baby seeing the world as if for the first time. Unlike a real baby, however, this baby understands that there is bitterness and sadness in the world, but still gives a bold assertion to embrace life and determine a value system that will help it to create amazing things. We're talking about an inspirational and powerful figure who's overcome life's bitterness and declares that they will create good in spite of the bad. So in that spirit, I'll end with this sentiment. I recently saw a video of a mother who created a fake Snapchat account listing her age as 14 and her gender as female, just to see what the Snapchat algorithm recommended her based on those two factors alone. Overwhelmingly, the videos shown were related to depression, self-harm, and even the other S word. I thought it was a powerful template. This woman using social media to expose the dangers of social media. I think that when social media first started to get more advanced algorithmic recommendation, that we as a society, generally speaking, thought that technological progress was a good thing. After all, we largely appreciate the fact that we can buy food from the store and no longer need to butcher our own livestock. And I think we trusted big tech just a little bit too much. But then, ironically, thanks to social media, we started to see people raising alarm bells about the dangers of social media. This woman, for example. And that's the whole point of Nietzsche's baby phase. It's someone who's not ignorant to the dangers of gazing into the abyss, but also has overcome the effects and can extract the benefit that led them to take a look in the first place. And so we must also do with AI. We should use it. We should become very educated about it. And I believe that if we're diligent about documenting and sharing best practices around its use, then I'm hopeful that the promise of Nietzsche's baby phase can come true, which is a period of great creation and positive change. So go be the baby. Thanks, and let's go lean into the nuance until next time.